The topic of today's webinar is tips and tricks teaching mixed ability classes with Prepare 10 and Prepare 11. As you probably know, Prepare 10 and 11, I hope some of you are familiar with our course for Prepare, not just from the secondary school, but also for the high school. If not, I will introduce you to these books and show you how you can use them when working with 10th and 11th graders. Okay. So my contact information, if you want to ask me some questions, if you have any concerns or something like that. So if you need a consultation, then you can use all of these sources to reach me. So you have my mobile number. It is available both at your usual mobile number that you can call me on. I also have it in Viber and in Telegram, so you can write me there. And you can see my working email, you can write me there. And also you see our Facebook page, linguist.ukraine, and of course our site. It's linguist.ua and publishing.linguist.ua. On those websites and on our Facebook page, also on our Instagram page, you can find all of the information about the upcoming books, upcoming courses that we have, and of course, all of the information about our not only books, but other projects that we are working on. Okay, I can see some messages in the chat box. Кам'янець-Подільський and Dnipropetrovsk. Hello, hello, hello. Kalush. Okay, very good. So the certificate will be received in 2-3 working days. Be patient because there would be a lot of you. As of right now, it's 123 people and the numbers are climbing. So you will receive the certificate in 2 to 3 working days. So for example, if today is Tuesday, maybe by Thursday or sometimes Friday, you should check your emails and see if you received the certificate. Also, if you can't see the mail from from Linguist, maybe check your junk boxes because sometimes email services tend to send our letters there. You also will receive a letter from Zoom after 4 days after the webinar is finished with a feedback form. It will help me. First of all, if you fill it out, because we are interested in knowing what topics of webinars are you interested in, and we will try to match those interests with ours and prepare more of the webinars that you are interested in. Okay, I see again questions. Sumy, Brovary, hello, hello, hello. So, certificate, I spoke to you, so you will receive it within 2-3 working days. Just check all of your folders in your email service to make sure that you get it. If you didn't, then either write to traininglinguist.com or better yet, write to my email or use my contact information, and then we will see what happened. Okay. So our agenda for the day, what we will be talking about. So we will talk about what is a mixed ability class. We will talk about some common problems that can happen with mixed ability classes, how we can use our course Prepare Ukrainian edition grade 10 and grade 11 for mixed ability classes. I will give you 10 tips for working with great mixed ability, for great work with mixed ability classes. And we will have a little bit of a Q&A session at the end. If you will have some questions, I will be happy to answer them. So, mixed ability class, what is it? The definition comes from the British Council, and it says that mixed ability in ELT usually refers to the differences that exist in a group in terms of different levels of language proficiency. So most of the time, the classes that we see in our schools are of mixed ability. Maybe if the school is selecting students by I forgot the word, by the subjects that they are learning. For example, we have classes that specialize in mathematics, or we have classes that specialize in, for example, history. So yeah, we have all of these different directions that the classes can go for. But sometimes there are specialized schools that work with languages or with math or with any other subjects. So yeah, but most of all in our general schools that we have mixed ability classes. I hope you agree with me. Okay, sorry, I just saw that somebody said that without a number. Why are the certificates without the number? Right now we are working. I will take a little bit of a detour. The certificates are without the numbers because we are working right now on making our certificates to be with numbers. So we are working right now on it. It's not as easy as it may sound or as it may look. So sadly, yes, we can't provide them to you right now with numbers. It would be just your general certificate about attending a webinar. Okay. So what factors can influence mixed ability in class? So first of all, it's maturity and age. And I think you will agree with me that maturity and age are not the same when it comes to children, especially, or teenagers, even more so, because usually age is just a number, but maturity can be measured by a lot of different things. So for example, how the child behaves, what are they thinking about, what are they doing? So it all creates maturity. And sometimes the child can be 15, 16 years old and he or she should be acting accordingly to their age, but they act like, for example, a 10-year-old. They are not interested in grown-up things, so to speak. They are interested more in just playing games and doing nothing. Multiple intelligences. So multiple intelligences, I guess it speaks for itself because our children usually are interested in different things, right? So that means they sometimes learn by listening. Sometimes they learn by reading. Sometimes they can learn by both listening and reading. Some people prefer to write things down and it helps them to remember things better. So it all depends also on our intelligence, how we learn things. Of course, learning styles. So we probably have classes where some students are more used to like auditory learning styles. Some students just need to look at you and look at the book. It's all different. Language levels. That's probably one of the most important factors, especially in Ukrainian schools, because some students may have a very high level of knowledge of English, and some may have just like basic level. So even if they can count to 100 or make sentences, just simple sentences, it's enough for them. But some students tend to be more, they tend to want more from learning a language, and they plan to use that knowledge of the language in their future or their career maybe, or something like that. But not all of the students think ahead, going back to maturity and age. Also, we have learner autonomy and cultural background, and of course, orientation towards an average student in the curriculum. So most of the time, I can say about everybody, but our educational system is or was oriented before NUSH started, was oriented towards an average student. So like your average person that should know this, this, and this, and that's all. But right now with NUSH coming along, we are all talking about and working with students as a personality. So the child is unique in its own way, and we should be mindful, and we should make some choices about how to work with those children, and so on and so on. Okay, so our stressed teacher that has a lot of things to do while working at school, while planning lessons, grading papers, talking with parents, and juggling personal life with work life, and just making everything come together. So what should I do as a teacher? What should I do to make my work with mixed ability classes easier and more approachable for not only for me, but for my students? How do I make English lessons fun and not turn my students away from learning a language? Because I know later in life, they will think, I should have learned English while I was in school. Why didn't I? Because I didn't want to, because I was bored, because I was not thinking about it, and so on and so on. So I know a lot of you have their own problems and concerns, but I will share some of my problems and concerns, and also some of my colleagues' problems and concerns when it comes to working with mixed ability classes. I will ask you to write in the chat box when you see the problem on the screen, to write plus or minus if you had the same problem. If you had the same problem, you write plus, if not, minus. And maybe if this problem happened to you or your colleague, how often does it happen? So you can either write every time, often, or maybe never. So express your meeting with this problem in plus or minus, or how often do you get this problem if you do. So half of the students have finished an exercise, but the other half only just began. I think this problem happens in most of the classes, because some of the children are, oh, I see a lot of pluses, often, oh, yeah. Trust me, this is one of my biggest problems and one of my colleagues' biggest problems, because always, yes, because because of the difference in children, they all have different approaches to doing stuff. And it's not only during English lessons, but also during, for example, math lessons, biology, chemistry, Ukrainian, and others. So what should we do? What can we do? Okay. So we can have them help other students. I think a lot of you used this action to distract your students from not creating noises and distracting others. So how can we use these students to help others? So maybe you can pair them up with weaker students and have them help them find those weaker students, help those weaker students find words in the text that they should find. Or maybe, I don't know, wipe the blackboard or write something on the blackboard, like some text that you will use for an exercise that is coming later. So it can be very helpful. Sometimes every now and then, yeah. Okay, so have them write some of their answers on board. So yeah, some teachers will say that by doing this, you will give the answers to the weaker students right away. But you can ask your students that have finished the exercise to write answers on the boards, for example, without the numbers. For example, you need to fill out you need to fill in the blanks in sentences, but have your students who finished the exercise earlier write those words that they used to fill in the blanks without the number of the sentence before it. Just write it in a random order on the board. And that way, your weaker students will see all of the available choices, and they will use those choices to basically fill in the blanks by knowing that they can use this because it's the correct answer to use. Okay, have them do an additional task. By doing this, you of course will be doing a lot more work, but you can do these additional tasks also by using by your students using their phones. We have WordWall, we have Kahoot, we have a lot of online resources that have a lot of already made tasks for your students. You can find those tasks, have them saved in your folders somewhere on your phone or maybe on your laptop if you're using a laptop in your class to show all of the things. And you can just give them the link and have them follow that link and do the exercises there. And of course, by doing that additional task, you can reward them with either grade that you write in their that you give them, or maybe like I used to give my students some additional points during their tests if they did some additional task during the lesson. So I said, oh, you will have +1 point to your test score. It also worked like magic every time, because some of the weaker students even tried to do that, also to do some additional tasks to get those additional points. And it was very fun, especially for the teenagers, when they are competitive, they want to do better than their friends and than their classmates. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Have them do something for you, like erasing the board. Yeah, you can For example, not like tell them to go erase the board, but maybe have them collect workbooks so you can check the homework that was given by you for this lesson. Or maybe have them help you grade the homeworks that you are grading right now, or any other task that you can think of, within reason, of course, you can give them. And plan the difficulty of your questions. So this, of course, should be done before the lesson. I think when you open your teacher's book, student's book, workbook, you see the amount of work that needs to be done. And of course, you will know that some of my students will be able to do this, some of them won't. So you will be already prepared. Before doing all of the additional tasks, you of course can give your students practice activities. So for example, if you never did some type of activities with your students, giving them those activities as an additional task, it's not really fair. So just give them a practice task like you have. For example, we have some of the games that I was making for a specific event that you probably saw on our Facebook page. I will talk about it at the end of the webinar. And on Word Wall, there is, for example, a game that is called Anagram. So you need to change the position of the letters to create a word. So they need to go in the correct order to make a word. If your students never did that task and they have no idea it exists, for example, then giving them the task just to make them not create noises, it won't work, because if they have no idea what to do, they will be complaining louder and saying, I don't know what to do here. Come help me, tell me what to do. Of course, the difficulty of the tasks should be ranging from the beginner to advanced. You can stop doing the activity when your lowest, weakest students have finished all of the easy questions. And of course, you can call to answer the questions, to show the results, your weaker students. And the strongest students should go last. Yeah, of course, strongest students will be like jumping from their place, raising their hand and screaming, I know the answer, but try to calm your student down, to tell them, give a chance to your classmate. And I hope you know all of these tips and tricks how to calm down your students, so we won't be going into that. Okay, so let's look at this example here of this situation. So 6 of your students are fairly fluent and they all sit in the front. As usual, students that know all sit at the front row. 10 or so are very low and they like to go in the middle or hide in the back. You want to do some student-centered activities in groups, but you are not sure how to do that. What's the best way to do this? Because they have very different levels of fluency, and how should I do this? So you can put your students in groups so that there is a balance between strong and weak students. No, sorry, my Ukrainian is slipping in. For example, if you have 6 strongest, of course, there will be, like if you divide them into 2 groups, 3 of your strongest students in one group and 3 in the other, 5 of your lowest in one, 5 in the other. So it's divided equally. The advantage of this is that the stronger students can support the weaker ones. They can help them do the tasks. Yes, they can do the tasks for them, but I think if you use this methods of working not once, but a few more times, the stronger students will get tired of doing exercises, of doing tasks for the weaker students, and they will encourage the weaker students to work together. Put students in groups of all strong students and all weak students. How that can help? The advantage of this division in groups is that the students feel comfortable with working in the group that is the same level as them. Sure, they will feel some negative feelings when it comes to losing, for example, if you turn this into a competition, but yeah. Okay. So, do you have those occurrences in your classrooms? Do you have this division in your students where we see a clear differentiation between the level of knowledge? So like some portion of the class knows everything and some just zero, of course. Yeah, I can see pluses, of course. Yeah, so most of the time it happens. Am I correct? Sadly, I am. Yeah, it happens. But it is how it is. And we probably got used to this situation, but I hope it changes soon. Maybe the situation in our country will influence our children, our teenagers especially, but it's sad and it's hard to think that the situation in the country can influence students and the situation in the country that is very negative. Okay. So some of the same few students that know everything answer nearly every question that you ask in a large group. So for example, if you are working with a full class, or if your class can be divided into two groups, because for everybody it's different. So you have all the same students that always answer your questions. You do work group to make sure others get a chance to practice speaking. But you want to hear somebody else talking, not just your usual 5 or 6 students. What can you do? Use wait time even after students start raising their hands. So for example, you give them a task. Tell me about your weekend. What were you doing? Where have you been? And so on and so on. And you give them, for example, 3 to 5 minutes to prepare. Within 3 minutes, all of your know-it-alls will raise their hand and want to give you an answer. But your other students will know that you are ready to listen to those people and they don't want to do anything. So yeah, you can tell that, oh, I want to hear somebody new. Please give it a thought and tell me, and so on and so on. So yeah, use your full wait time and just go for it. Don't give up. Prepare quieter students to be called on. So usually a lot of people, a lot of teachers can say. So for example, Olena, Irina, Maxim, and Andriy, I want to hear from you how you spend your weekend. And you named all of the weaker students, quieter students. And they are in a panic mode. What, why, how, when, why it's me, why? and just you gave them, you told them that I will be hearing from you. You have 3 to 5 minutes to prepare. Also, you can use here the advice from our previous problems that we talked about. So for example, you can say that, oh, you can ask, for example, Sophia, Maria, Ivan, and Petro for help. And you can choose who you want to work with and ask them some questions, how to answer, how to tell about my weekend pattern. Allow time for prepared participation. So once again, you shouldn't be doing this activity just once in a while. Make it a regular occurrence in your classroom. So for example, you have 3 lessons a week in some classes, or maybe 2 lessons a week. And one of those lessons will always be time to speak, to improve their speaking. And the topics can be chosen not only by you, but by your students as well. You can even like have a draw, use some container, have your students write down the topics they want to talk about, and either you or one of the students from the class chooses or draws a paper from that container, and it would be the topic that we are discussing this week. So resist your temptation to move closer when your student is too quiet. I tended to do this in my time while working at school. So I was like, I wasn't trying to intimidate. I was trying just to listen better. And I think a lot of you will agree, because if your student is speaking quieter and quieter, you're just trying to listen to them. It's not coming closer to like frighten them, but to listen better. But most of the time, children think that it's you trying to frighten them, not to listen to them better. And they think that if a teacher is coming closer, it means that they are doing something wrong. So yeah, it happens sometimes, but just try to stay near the blackboard or near your table when a student is talking quietly, and maybe just ask them to raise the volume of their voice, or maybe to ask them to move closer if they're comfortable with it. I guess there are a lot of possibilities that can happen. And call on students in a variety of ways. So I saw on Pinterest a few ideas. So there was glass with like popsicle sticks in them, and on each popsicle stick there was a name of the student. And if you had to choose someone to answer to a question or do a task on a blackboard, you draw that popsicle stick from that glass and call out the name of that student. Of course, you can use some apps from, for example, even the WordWall app, because it's an app and also it's a site, so you can choose either one. And there is one of the games that you can find on the WordWall app. It's like a big roulette. So you just spin it and the arrow will point to, for example, one of the names. You can add as many sections to this dial as you want. And you can fill in those sections with the names of your students. And there are a lot of different ways that you can call your students to answer. Maybe if some of you have already chosen some of those things to use. You can, oh, I see that Oksana, that it's such a good idea. Yeah, because most of the time students get really anxious when you open the classroom, when you open the classroom book, yeah, when you open journal, a classroom journal, and you just try to find who hasn't answered the questions yet, who hasn't got a grade in a while. And it's like, oh, Maria, Ivan, Maxim, and so on and so on. So yeah, but this way it's way more fun, and it's not bringing children stress, because they are all in the same, they have even playing field, so to speak. And it's not like, oh, he hasn't got any grades in a month, the teacher will ask him. But no, the teacher will ask, for example, Petro, who has already had 5 marks and 5 grades. And yeah, she will ask him again because she drew the popsicle stick with the name, with his name. Okay, so you're halfway through the term, maybe even at the end of the term, and students are getting tired, both physically and mentally, as do we. Whenever you try to do one thing for too long, some students, they just check out, log out, however you call that. And it can result in either low energy or disruptive behavior. Most of the time, it's disruptive behavior. But some children prefer to just like log out. And if they sit at the end of the classroom, they just like to hide behind books and sleep. Okay, so what can we do here? Of course, it's variety of your tasks, and also vary your approach. So not only different levels of learning, but also your approach and technique that you use. For example, simple question: do you like learning new languages? You can start with a listening task to this question. So for example, find dialogue between 2 friends that are talking about one of them learning a new language and how he or she feels about it. And his or her friend is saying, well, I can never find it in myself to learn a new language, for example, and so on and so on. You can do a writing task. You can share in peers, how is it, what feelings do you have when you think about learning new language. And of course, we can have 4 corners activity. Classroom management. So yeah, if your students work in a classroom that is specifically about English language, when it's like the specialty cabinet, so to speak, yeah? So it's only a cabinet that, a classroom that is for studying English. So it has a lot of pictures with different, I don't know, types of phrasal verbs, or maybe with all of the grammar rules on them, or maybe some useful phrases. Of course, it's board work. So it means going to the board, writing something, maybe, of course, erasing something from it. So your students shouldn't be afraid of going to the board to answer, or maybe to write something, because most of the time going to the board to do something, it's like, why? I don't want to. I want to stay at my working station, at my workplace, and just answer the question there. Of course, eye contact, because most of the time when a teacher makes an eye contact with a student, it's like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble for the student. But you just wanted to like check in with the student to see if he or she is all right, if everything is okay, and they are like, uh-oh, uh-oh. Of course, confidence both in you and in your students, and dealing with the unexpected, like the low energy or disruptive behavior. So yeah, one time when my students were giving me trouble by not behaving at the lesson, I just took out my phone, my earphones, plugged them in, and like pretended that I was listening to music. And it, of course, I wasn't listening to music, but they like stopped doing everything. And they were like, look at me, like, teacher, listening to music. And I took out one of my earbuds and I was like, well, you're not listening to me, you're not learning, so why should I spend my time, my energy on doing something that is not giving anything to me or to you? I will do whatever I want, same as you. And after that, they understood maybe on some level that I'm a human too. I'm not just a walking encyclopedia, and I have feelings too, and I can get hurt when they do stuff like that. So yeah, after that, they managed to keep calm and do nothing when it comes to disruptive behavior. But low energy, it happens. We can't do anything about it, but ask probably parents of those students to make sure that the students are sleeping enough, eating enough, and that they are healthy. And of course, interest, working with interest. Arousing students' curiosity by using, of course, some online sources, playing games, maybe acting out stories, and so on. Asking meaningful questions relating to students' lives, same, asking how their weekend was, about their hobbies, their likes and dislikes, and so on and so on. And of course, involve as many people as possible. It can be team games and also discussions, because there are as many thoughts as there are people. So yeah, you can do anything basically. So these are our books for the course Prepare. Yes, on the cover it says Prepare for School Exams, because these books can also be used by teachers to prepare not to only learn English in 10th and 11th grade, but also to prepare your students for exams. There is a specific sign that shows that these specific exercises will work better in preparing your students for exams. If you have enough time, you can scan the QR code, but also in the end, I will have this slide once again. This QR code will send you to our site, where you can see a little bit more about the course. But now I will show you some of the pages and how you can use Prepare Ukrainian Edition grade 10 for working with students of mixed ability classes. So, for example, here we have our first page, New Year, New Challenge, and we have exercise 1. So there's a quiz, and your students need to compare the answers. If we look closer to our quiz, of course, there are some parts of the sentences that are highlighted in different color. All those parts, all those collocations will be needed later on in other exercises. You will see it very clearly. So for example, you can do this as a group activity. You will have, for example, 1 or 2 students that are reading the questions out loud. And also they are reading the options that your students can choose from. Of course, some of the students that have that are weaker, they maybe not be able to understand fully the meaning of the question or of the option that are given. You can say at the beginning of doing the quiz, so if you don't understand what you're hearing, raise your hand and ask. And also you can engage your stronger students to help those weaker students. So like combining activities a little bit more. So for example, while doing the quiz, each of your students are checking off their options, which they chose. For example, some of them chose A in the first question, some of them chose B in the second question, and one of the students asks, what is figure it out? What does it mean? And one of your strongest students may say, oh, it's when you understand what is happening, what is going on, or when you know how to do certain things, and so on. So after all of your students have checked out their answers, and yeah, maybe some time for question 5, so one of your weaker students may see, for example, a phrase try out, and they saw it somewhere on YouTube, maybe in some video that they watched or something like that, and they go, oh, I know what try out means. Yeah, they learned it from somewhere else and they know what it means. So yeah, when your weaker students try to shout out the meanings of the words and it disrupts your flow of the lesson, don't be angry, because they the happiness that you see on your students' face when they say something right, it's better than just having all of your students write their tests for, I don't know, like excellent marks. And for example, for the 6th question, they chose B. Then you have, of course, our phrases, yeah, and phrasal verbs about education. The vocabulary part is about. But exercise 2 says, turn to page 120 and check your results. Who feels the most optimistic about the new school year and why? So of course, when you go to page 120, you will see all of these test results and however many points your students got, the results are here. And of course, you can talk about their feelings. They can say that, oh, but the result of my quiz is not how I feel about the new school year. Not at all, but maybe they just chose those answers because they felt like that in the moment. It all depends, so to speak. But yeah, you can, of course, during all of those exercises, ask your students if they have any questions about the words, about the meaning of the words, and so on and so on. We are going back to our page 10, and we have exercise 3. So we had phrasal verbs highlighted in the questions of the quiz and the options that are given. And now we need to match those phrasal verbs from the quiz with their meanings. So yeah, some of the phrasal verbs can have like a specific meaning, but most of the time it depends on the situation, yeah, about in the context of the sentence. And I think you probably told your students that different topics, different phrasal verbs can differentiate in meanings. Prepare, okay, I see some questions, so I'm going back. Prepare 10 for 3 hours a week. Most of the time, yes, because it's a big and loaded book. So yeah, it will work for 3 hours a week. But if you choose this course, you can make changes. You can, of course, use it for 2 hours a week. It all depends on your class. And also, you know that all of the programs that are now used in our education, they are just framework. We can change the books however we want. Okay, so let me, yeah, Nadia, so this book is for the 10th grade, and it wasn't up for the competition because it's not for the 5th and 6th classes and the 1st classes. It's for the 10th grade. Рифміністерства. We are working on it, but it's this book is it has the okay to work with. You can check all of the information. Okay, so we have not much time, so let's go through it quickly, through all of the other things that we have. So our exercise 3. So I will click through it. I will give a quick rundown. So for example, remain while others leave, stay behind, do an activity with others, join in, and so on and so on. So basically, your stronger students can help explain the phrasal verbs, and your weaker students can try to find the meaning. Okay, so here we have a listening exercise. I will again click through it. I won't go fully through. So yeah, and we can go back to the exercise as many times as we want. The next exercise, exercise 6. It also works with our phrasal verbs from the quiz. So once again, you work continuously with those phrasal verbs to make sure that your students are familiar with them. And what happens if you hand in homework late at your school? Hand in as in здавати, домашнє завдання. Read out, figuring out, and so on and so on and so on. Reading is, of course, an essential part of learning. So yeah, you can work with the text and look at it. So it's a big text. There's a lot of work with it, but of course you can spin it however you want it. You can use parts of the text, not as a whole text, but some parts of it. You can create different exercises with it. You can choose the difficulty level and other things. Okay, so I will just show you because success at work, friendship, education, and so on, and attitude to sports. And of course, we have exercises after the text about filling in the gaps, working with highlighted words. Same here, you can include your stronger students to explain the difference between the words. For example, know, knew, know, knowing. It's all different forms of the word know, but what is the difference between those forms and which should be used in this particular situation? Okay, just quickly. So if you are interested, I will, of course, give you the link to the book. So the tips that I promised you. Group according to ability level. We already covered this topic, so to speak. So you can group according to their level. or you can even mix the ability levels and mix the groups. Expect different level of performance from different levels of students. Again, so don't be disappointed when a weaker student shows, of course, a lesser level of knowledge than your stronger students. It takes time to climb the ladder, so to speak, to learn more. And of course, there has to be passion, not only from you to learn, to teach, but from your students to learn. Because if you force them, it won't help. Peer in a position, we already covered that as well. Also encourage a helpful atmosphere. So make it a habit to have your stronger students cooperate with weaker students. So for example, assign a group project and have mixed ability level groups again work on those projects. So for example, they need to present a culture of certain country to the whole class. Of course, the stronger students will take the leadership part. They will continue to work as leaders. But for example, maybe some weaker students will find more interesting information online. So for example, some videos, some interesting pictures, or maybe they are interested in a particular culture themselves, and they can give an insight for this project. Allow first languages to be spoken. If some of you attended our conference on the previous month, you probably saw my talk where I talked about immersing students into the language, and I said that you shouldn't have the ability, your students shouldn't have the ability to fall back on your native language. But when you have a mixed ability class and you want to make them improve their language, yes, it should be allowed, because they will fall back onto their native language without even thinking about it when they don't understand what to do. Okay, make time for learning stations. So learning stations is something that is widely popular in, of course, USA. They have different learning stations. So it's about grammar, about, for example, symbolism, about writing, and so on and so on. You can create those learning stations in your classroom, and it helps because your students, especially mixed ability students, can go to those stations and find information that are interesting and useful for them, and maybe exchange that information with other students and help them improve. Tailor content to student interest when possible. So again, you have a lot of online sources, you have all of different materials online, you have different courses that you can use. You can pick and choose. If you have, for example, a book that is chosen by the school for this year, it doesn't mean that you should follow this book, that you need to follow this book from beginning to end. It's only like a framework. You can change it, you can choose whatever you need, even from other different sources. Don't be afraid to do so. Break your class into mini classes. So for example, in Prepare 10 and 11, you can take units, for example, unit 1 that you saw me show you before, and you can divide it. So for example, one lesson is only vocabulary. The next lesson is reading. The next lesson is grammar, for example. You shouldn't have to cover all of the parts in one lesson, because it's impossible to do so. Don't be afraid to break it up into smaller sections and spend time working through those mini classes, through those mini sections. Use strategic interaction method. So what is it, and how can we use it? Strategic interaction is dividing your class into two groups. Each group will select one person or maybe more, depending on the situation, on the role play that you put them in. And that person or people will be the speaker or speakers for the group. Each group has a different goal to achieve, and they need to go to the board and come up with, for example, an explanation for some part of the role play or the rules or something like that. And so they can go back to their group, to their part of the classroom when they think that they relate the information as best as they could. So, for example, you divided your class into two groups, and one group needs to tell the other group that for example, their first group wants to go to the cinema to watch some film, and they want to invite the second group to the cinema to go with them. And so they need to come up with the invitation. They need to decide which film they will watch, when will they go, and so on. So for example, the first student that comes up to the board will be inviting the other group. So he or she will say, I want to ask you to join us, or I want to invite you all to go with us. But the second student that comes up to the board will need to say where are they going. We are going to watch a film. It will be in the big room, in the big, I don't know, so something like that. So they need to rely on each other to give the information as best as they can, so the other group understands. And for example, after 5 minutes of explaining the action, so inviting, where, when, how, and so on, the second group needs to say, the first group wanted to invite us to the cinema to watch a film. The film's name is Avengers, for example. It will happen on a Friday at 5 o'clock. If the second group got all of those questions correct, answered correct, success. If they had like only half of the questions answered correctly, success. If they had only like 1 or 2, it's a success, but a small one. Yeah. So yeah, they need to work together to achieve their task. And make yourself available for one-on-one help. So make sure that your students know that they can come to you if they have any questions, concerns when it comes to lessons, of course, when it comes to learning, but also when it comes to maybe some personal stuff, because a lot of students find it hard to open up to teachers especially, and I think it will be a pleasant surprise for you all to see that some of the students that never talk, never interact with you during the lessons, maybe come up to you after the lessons and ask for advice, or maybe ask for some questions How, for example, how can I improve my learning? What should I do? What can you tell me? And so on and so on. Okay, so once again, prepare. In the letter that will be sent to you by Zoom, and of course, in the letter that will be sent to you in the thank you letter with the certificate, you will have a link to our website with these books. You will be able to look at them, look through them and get familiar.